When Orson found those photos of me and Linwood at the hotel, he froze our bank accounts before I could even open my mouth. He acted like cheating was some unforgivable crime. But honestly, sleeping with coworkers is normal these days. It's not like I ever stopped loving him. I know what you're thinking. You're probably judging me already. But you don't understand what my life was like before Linwood came along. Orson worked all the time. He barely looked at me anymore. When was the last time he told me I looked pretty? I can't even remember. I'm 33 years old. I work as a receptionist at Morrison Insurance. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Or it did, until Orson decided to play financial dictator. We have 2 kids together. Cressida is 10 and Myron is 7. They're good kids, but they don't understand adult problems. The thing is, I never meant for any of this to happen. Linwood started working at our office 6 months ago. He's 29, single, and actually pays attention when I talk. He asks about my day. He notices when I get my hair done. Simple things that Orson stopped doing years ago. It started innocent enough. Linwood would bring me coffee in the mornings. We'd chat during lunch breaks. He made me laugh. When was the last time Orson made me laugh? He's always stressed about work or fixing something around the house. He never just talks to me anymore. The first time Linwood asked me for drinks after work, I almost said no. But then I thought, what's the harm? It's just drinks between coworkers. People do it all the time. Orson wouldn't even notice I was late getting home anyway. 1 drink turned into 3. Linwood told me I was beautiful. He said I deserved better than being ignored at home. When he kissed me in the parking lot, I felt alive for the first time in years. Is that so wrong? To want to feel wanted? The hotel thing happened 3 weeks later. I told Orson I was shopping with my sister Fenella. Linwood booked a room at the Hampton Inn on 5th Street. It was nice. Clean sheets, room service, someone who actually wanted to be with me. We took some photos. Nothing too crazy, just us being happy together. I thought they were deleted, but apparently, my phone backed everything up to the cloud. And apparently, Orson knows my password. He found everything last night while I was giving the kids baths. The photos, the texts, even the hotel receipt I forgot to throw away. When I came downstairs, he was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. My stomach dropped when I saw my own face staring back at me from the screen. Linwood's arm was around me. We were both smiling. Orson didn't yell at first. He just looked at me with this cold expression I'd never seen before. He asked if I had anything to tell him. I tried to play dumb, but he turned the laptop toward me. Then he exploded. He called me names I won't repeat. He said I'd destroyed our family. He asked how long it had been going on. When I tried to explain that it wasn't what it looked like, he laughed. Actually laughed. That's when he pulled out his phone and started making calls. First to the bank, then to his parents. I watched him freeze our joint checking account, our savings, even the credit cards. All while staring right at me. I tried to tell him he was overreacting. It's not like I emptied our bank account or anything. I never stopped taking care of our kids or our home. This thing with Linwood, it was just something I needed, something that made me feel human again. But Orson wouldn't listen. He packed a bag for himself and both kids. Cressida kept asking what was wrong, why Daddy looked so angry. Myron started crying because he could feel the tension. I tried to comfort them, but Orson pulled them away from me. Before he left, he turned around in the doorway and said something that made my blood run cold. He said I wouldn't see a cent until I explained everything to his parents. Then he loaded our children into his car and drove away. That was 12 hours ago. I've been sitting in this empty house ever since, trying to figure out how everything went so wrong so fast. My phone keeps buzzing with missed calls from his mother, Marilla. I know what's waiting for me when I finally face them. This morning, I got a text from Orson, just an address and a time. His parents' house at 10 a.m. No discussion, no negotiation, just a command like I'm some kind of criminal. I called my own mother, Lavinia, hoping for some support. She listened to the whole story, then sighed and said, maybe Orson just doesn't understand modern marriage. People have different needs, she said. Maybe this is just a rough patch we can work through. But when I called my sister Fenella, she had a very different reaction. She screamed at me over the phone, asking how I could be so stupid and selfish. She said I'd destroyed my family and acted like it was nothing. Easy for her to say. She's been married to the same boring man for 15 years. She's just jealous I had the guts to do what she never could. Now I'm getting dressed to face the firing squad at Orson's parents' house. I know they hate me already. Marilla never thought I was good enough for her precious son. This just gives her ammunition. But I'm not going to let them make me feel like some kind of monster. Yes, I made a mistake. Yes, I should have handled things differently. But I'm still Cressida and Myron's mother. I'm still Orson's wife. This family doesn't work without me, whether they want to admit it or not. The drive to the Hendersons' house feels like walking to my execution. Their perfect suburban lawn, their matching shutters, their judgmental neighbors peeking through curtains. Everything about this place makes me feel small. Marilla opens the door before I can knock. She's wearing her church dress and her disappointed face. She doesn't say hello, just steps aside and points toward the living room. Simeon, Orson's father, is sitting in his recliner reading the newspaper. He doesn't look up when I enter. Orson is on the couch with both kids curled up next to him. Cressida won't meet my eyes. Myron is sucking his thumb, something he hasn't done in 2 years. They both look scared and confused. Marilla sits across from me and folds her hands in her lap. She asks how I could do this to Orson and the children. Her voice is calm, but I can hear the anger underneath. She wants me to grovel, to beg for forgiveness. Instead, I tell her the truth. If Orson hadn't ignored me for years, maybe I wouldn't have needed affection elsewhere. A marriage is supposed to be a partnership, but I felt like a single mother for the past 3 years. When was the last time he took me on a date? When was the last time he told me he loved me without me saying it first? Simeon finally looks up from his newspaper. He says that's no excuse for adultery. The word hangs in the air like a curse. Adultery. Like I'm some scarlet woman from an old movie. Orson speaks for the first time since I arrived. He says he worked extra hours to provide for our family. He says he thought I understood that everything he did was for us. He asks if I told Linwood about our financial problems, about the mortgage payment we almost missed last month. I feel my face get hot. Yes, I talked to Linwood about our problems. That's what people do when they care about each other. They share their lives. Orson never wanted to hear about my problems, so I found someone who did. Cressida finally looks at me. She asks why I was kissing another man in the photos. Her voice is so small, so hurt. I try to explain that adults sometimes make mistakes, that it doesn't mean I love her any less, but she turns away and buries her face in Orson's shoulder. Marilla stands up and announces that she's seen enough. She says I'm no longer welcome in their home until I get professional help. She says the children will be staying here until I prove I can be trusted again. I lose my temper then. I tell her she has no right to keep my children from me. I'm their mother, not her. I made one mistake, and now everyone's acting like I'm some kind of monster. What about Orson's mistakes? What about all the times he chose work over family? But nobody's listening anymore. Orson is comforting the kids, who are both crying now. Simeon is shaking his head in disgust. Marilla is holding the front door open, waiting for me to leave. As I walk to my car, I hear Myron calling for me. When I turn around, he's pressed against the living room window, his little hands flat against the glass. I wave, but Orson pulls him away from the window and closes the curtains. The next few days blur together in a haze of humiliation and anger. I try to buy groceries, but my debit card is declined. The cashier gives me a pitying look while the line behind me grows restless. Mrs. Patterson from next door is 2 people back. She pretends not to see me, but I know she's listening to every word. I call the bank, but they confirm what I already know. Orson has frozen all our joint accounts pending legal review. I have exactly $47 in cash and a gas tank that's nearly empty. At work, people whisper when I walk by. Linwood avoids eye contact during our morning meeting. When I try to catch him in the break room, he mumbles something about keeping things professional and hurries away. I want to scream at all of them. This is exactly why people don't take risks, why they settle for boring, dead marriages. The minute you try to find some happiness, everyone turns against you. My phone rings constantly. Orson's lawyer, Marilla, even my own sister calling to lecture me. I stop answering. What's the point? They've already decided I'm the villain in this story. On Thursday, my boss calls me into her office. Mrs. Chen has always been fair to me, but today she looks uncomfortable. She says there have been complaints about my personal life affecting the workplace. Someone sent her copies of the photos Orson found. I know it was Marilla. She's trying to destroy every part of my life, not just my marriage. I try to explain that my personal relationships have nothing to do with my job performance, but Mrs. Chen isn't buying it. She says I'm suspended pending an investigation into workplace harassment. Harassment? I'm the one being harassed. Linwood was a willing participant in everything that happened between us. But apparently, his version of events is very different from mine. He's claiming I pursued him aggressively, that he tried to keep things professional. It's amazing how quickly men change their tune when things get complicated. 3 weeks ago, Linwood was telling me he'd never felt this way about anyone before. Now he's acting like I forced myself on him. I drive to his apartment complex that evening. I need to talk to him face to face, away from the office gossip and judgment. His building is one of those cheap places with thin walls and a broken security gate. Not exactly the romantic getaway he made it sound like. When he opens the door, he looks panicked. He asks what I'm doing there, glances nervously down the hallway. I push past him into the apartment. It's messier than I remembered, with pizza boxes stacked on the counter and clothes scattered everywhere. I ask him why he's been avoiding me, why he's letting everyone else control our relationship. We're adults, I remind him. We can make our own choices. But Linwood shakes his head and says, this whole thing has gotten too complicated. He says he never meant for it to go this far. He thought I understood it was just casual fun between coworkers. When I remind him of all the things he said about us having a future together, he claims he was just being nice. Nice. Like I'm some pathetic woman who can't tell the difference between politeness and genuine affection. Like I imagined all those intimate conversations, all those promises about being there for me when things got tough. I try to kiss him, to remind him of what we had together, but he steps back. He says maybe we should cool things off for a while, let the drama die down, then maybe we can be friends again. Friends. After everything we shared, everything we meant to each other, he wants to be friends. I tell him exactly what I think of his friendship and slam the door on my way out. The next morning, I wake up to 17 missed calls from my mother. When I finally call her back, she's crying. She says Marilla contacted her with copies of all the evidence. Photos, text messages, even hotel receipts I didn't know Orson had found. My own mother has seen everything. The intimate photos, the messages where I complained about my marriage, the receipts that show I used our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms. She asks how I could be so careless, so cruel to Orson and the children. Even Lavinia, who always takes my side in everything, sounds disappointed in me. She says she'll lend me money for a lawyer, but I need to figure out how to fix this mess. She can't keep defending me when the evidence is so overwhelming. My sister Fenella shows up at my house that afternoon with a box of groceries and a lecture. She says she'll take the kids for a while if it comes to that, for their own good. She can't stand watching them suffer because of my selfishness. I tell her the kids belong with their mother, not their aunt, but Fenella points out that their mother doesn't have access to her own bank account right now. How am I supposed to feed them or pay for their school supplies? What happens when the mortgage payment is due next week? These are problems I haven't let myself think about yet. I keep assuming Orson will come to his senses and realize he's punishing the children along with me. But Fenella says he's already talked to the school about changing the emergency contact information. He's treating this like a permanent separation, not a temporary fight. That evening, I swallow my pride and call Orson directly. I tell him we need to talk, just the two of us, without his parents and lawyers involved. I suggest meeting at the coffee shop where we had our first date, somewhere neutral and private. He agrees, but his voice sounds different, colder. more distant than I've ever heard it. When I arrive at the coffee shop, he's already there, sitting in the corner booth with a manila folder in front of him. I order my usual latte and sit across from him, trying to recapture some of the intimacy we used to share. I tell him I know I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving him. This thing with Linwood was just a symptom of problems we can fix together. Orson opens the folder and spreads papers across the table. Bank statements, credit card bills, phone records. He's been busy while I've been feeling sorry for myself. He shows me charges I'd forgotten about, text messages I thought were deleted, a paper trail that makes me look calculating and deliberate. He says he's filed for divorce and full custody of the children. He's moving them into his parents' house permanently, where they'll have stability and proper supervision. He's also demanding repayment of the money I spent on my affair, money that came from our joint accounts without his knowledge or consent. I try to argue, but he cuts me off. He says I had 6 months to end this thing before it destroyed our family. I had dozens of opportunities to tell him the truth, to work on our marriage instead of sneaking around behind his back. Instead, I chose to lie to his face every single day. When I start to cry, he doesn't comfort me like he used to. He just sits there watching me fall apart, his expression never changing. Finally, he stands up and says the papers will be served tomorrow. I should find a lawyer if I want to contest anything, but he has enough evidence to get whatever he wants. As he walks away, I call after him, asking about the kids. When can I see them? When can we talk about visitation? He stops at the door and says that's up to the courts now. Then he's gone, leaving me alone with a table full of evidence of my own betrayal. The legal papers arrive the next morning via certified mail. Divorce petition, custody filing, restraining order, demand for financial restitution. The numbers are staggering. Hotel bills, restaurant charges, even the lingerie I bought for my dates with Linwood. Everything itemized and calculated with interest. I call every lawyer in the phone book, but none of them want to take my case without a substantial retainer. The few who agree to consult with me take one look at Orson's evidence and suggest I consider settling quickly. One actually laughs when I ask about getting custody of the children. My mother comes over that weekend with my father, Homer, in tow. He hasn't said much about the whole situation, but I can see the disappointment in his eyes. He's always been proud of me, his youngest daughter who married well and gave him beautiful grandchildren. Now he can barely look at me. Lavinia tries to be supportive, but even she's running out of patience. She asks what I was thinking, risking everything for a man who won't even take my phone calls now. She says she raised me better than this, taught me to value family above everything else. I try to explain that I felt invisible in my own marriage, that I needed someone to see me as more than just a mother and housekeeper. But my parents don't understand. They've been married for 40 years, through good times and bad. They think commitment means suffering in silence when things get difficult. Homer finally speaks up. He says marriage isn't about being happy every single day. It's about building something together, making sacrifices for the people you love. He asks if 6 months of excitement was worth losing my children, my home, my reputation in the community. I want to tell him yes, that feeling alive and desired was worth any price. But sitting in my empty house with divorce papers on the coffee table, I'm not so sure anymore. The worst part is the silence from my kids. Orson won't let me talk to them on the phone. When I drive by the elementary school at pickup time, I see them getting into Marilla's car instead of mine. Cressida looks older somehow, more serious. Myron still sucks his thumb. I try to approach them once, but the school security guard stops me. Apparently, I'm not authorized to pick them up anymore. The other parents stare as I'm escorted back to my car. Some of them are people I've known for years, mothers I've carpooled with and shared birthday parties with. Now they look at me like I'm dangerous, like infidelity might be contagious. Their children aren't allowed to play with mine anymore. Birthday party invitations have stopped coming. I've become the cautionary tale they'll whisper about at PTA meetings. Social media is even worse. Someone posted a video of my meltdown at the school, and it's been shared hundreds of times. The comments are brutal. People I thought were friends calling me selfish and disgusting. Neighbors saying they always knew something was wrong with me. I deactivate my Facebook account, but the damage is done. In a town this size, everyone knows everyone's business. I can't go to the grocery store or gas station without feeling eyes on me, hearing whispers behind my back. Linwood has completely disappeared from my life. He transferred to another branch office across town. When I tried calling him one last time, his number was disconnected. The man who promised he'd never abandon me couldn't get away fast enough when things got complicated. My lawyer, the one I finally scraped together enough money to hire, says my case is hopeless. The evidence against me is overwhelming, and I have no leverage for negotiation. My best option is to agree to Orson's terms and hope he'll be generous with visitation rights. But I'm not ready to give up yet. I know my children need their mother, even if everyone else has turned against me. I decide to make one last attempt at reconciliation, to show Orson and his family that I'm willing to fight for what matters most. The custody hearing is scheduled for next month. Orson's lawyer has prepared a presentation that makes me look like an unfit mother. They have witnesses ready to testify about my behavior, evidence of my lies and deception, character references that paint me as selfish and unstable. My lawyer suggests I consider supervised visitation as a compromise, 1 day a week, with a court-appointed monitor present to ensure the children's safety. The implication is clear. I'm being treated like a danger to my own kids. The night before the hearing, I can't sleep. I keep thinking about everything I've lost, everything I threw away for a few months of feeling special. My marriage, my children, my job, my reputation, all for a man who won't even return my phone calls now. But I also think about those months with Linwood, the way he made me feel beautiful and interesting and alive. For the first time in years, I felt like myself instead of just Orson's wife or the kid's mother. Is it wrong to want more than just existing? The courthouse is intimidating, all marble floors and echoing hallways. Orson arrives with his parents and his lawyer, a sharp woman in an expensive suit who looks at me like I'm something unpleasant she stepped in. My own lawyer is young and nervous, clearly outmatched by the opposition. He keeps shuffling papers and adjusting his tie. When the judge enters, I realize this is really happening. My family is being dissolved in a sterile government building by strangers who don't know anything about our real lives. Orson's lawyer presents her case methodically. The affair, the lies, the financial betrayal, the emotional damage to the children. She has photos of Cressida crying, recordings of Myron asking why Mommy doesn't live with them anymore. When it's my turn to speak, I try to explain that I never meant to hurt anyone. I was lonely and made poor choices, but I'm still a good mother who loves her children more than anything. I promise to get counseling, to do whatever it takes to rebuild their trust. But the judge has already made up her mind. She awards full custody to Orson with supervised visitation for me every other weekend. I'm ordered to pay child support, despite having no job, and to reimburse Orson for the money I spent on my affair. As we leave the courthouse, Marilla approaches me one last time. She says this is what happens when people don't appreciate what they have. She hopes I'm satisfied with the destruction I've caused. I want to defend myself, to point out all the ways Orson failed as a husband before I ever met Linwood. But my children are standing behind her, holding their father's hands, looking at me like I'm a stranger. That night, alone in my empty house with eviction notices piling up on the kitchen table, I finally understand the full cost of my choices. I lost everything that mattered for something that was never real to begin with. But even now, sitting in the wreckage of my life, I can't bring myself to regret those months with Linwood completely. For a brief time, I felt like the woman I used to be before marriage and motherhood consumed my identity. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe it makes me a terrible person. But it also makes me human. I had needs that weren't being met, dreams that were slowly dying in the routine of daily life. I reached for something more, and it destroyed everything I had. Tomorrow I'll start looking for a new job, a new place to live, a way to rebuild some kind of relationship with my children. But tonight, I'm mourning not just what I lost, but what I never had in the first place. A marriage where I felt truly seen and valued. They can freeze my bank accounts and take my children and turn my whole family against me. But they can't change the fact that for 6 months, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. And if I'm being completely honest, I'd probably do it all again if I had the chance. I guess that makes me the villain in this story. But every villain thinks they're the hero of their own life. And in my version of events, I'm just a woman who wanted to be loved the way she deserved. Too bad the world doesn't work that way.